nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Creator, or by whatever name we invoke that animates, motivates, and comforts us, we are grateful for this place we are privileged to call our home. We are bound together as a community, an intricate web of social and economic relationships. The quality of our individual lives is in part dependent on the health and vitality of our community. When our community is tested by forces beyond our control, and last night we had a great demonstration of such forces, we are thankful for the hard work and spirit of solidarity that helps us restore our community. We are also thankful for the gift of compassionate care that was so beautifully demonstrated by Billings firefighter/EMT Becky Biggins and her care for the 8-year-old girl hit by a line drive. We are blessed to have such inspiration in our midst. The smooth, efficient operation of city government requires lots of decisions to be made. We are thankful for the work of city staff to bring forward the information needed to make such decisions and to make the issues clearer. Grant us the wisdom to make decisions that enable our community to be a safe, thriving, happy community. Amen.
Thank you. The mayor is in Vermont right now, and hopefully he's bringing back ice cream from Ben & Jerry's for everyone. So the next time you see him, ask him for your share. Denise, would you call roll?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Shaw. Here. Gulick.
Here.
Neese.
Here.
Owen.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Chiriki.
I'm here.
Tidswell.
He's an excused absence.
Thank you. Purinton.
Here.
Repsis.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Boyette.
Here. And Mayor Cole is absent, but getting us ice cream. Okay. The minutes, the June 27th, 2022 minutes are still pending, so that leaves us with the July 11th, 2022 minutes, and I think Council Member Chiriki had a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I would like to change the my comments in item 8. It's basically, it says right now that I was concerned with the large amount of water users from outside the city limits were using, and Ms. Keeler very kindly went and actually got the actual words that I used there, which is, you know, the magic of electronic worlds. Do you want me to read it again for the record, or do you, yeah? Okay.
Yes, please.
So what I said then, and what I'd like the record to reflect, is it concerns me that we now have 2 large users of our city's water supply that are basically taking the city's water and selling it to people outside of the city. I'm not concerned at this point, but I wanted to keep an eye on this, be thinking about whether or not we need to create a separate rate for people like the new Coca-Cola bottling plant and Yellowstone water. Thank you. So that would be my motion to change it from large amount of water to what I just said.
Is there a second? Councilman Neese? Any discussion? No discussion? Okay, then all in favor of the July 11th, 2022 minutes with the changes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are passed. Thank you. So tonight we have courtesies, and we have Chief St. John here. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good evening. I have 3 courtesies with your permission.
Please.
Could I have Officer Annalisa Jones please report to the podium?
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor and Council, on April 18th of this year, Officer Jones was on patrol in the area of the 4100 block of King Avenue East and notified that that medical was responding to a report of an unresponsive 2-year-old who was not breathing, turning blue, and possibly having a cardiac event. Officer Jones was first on the scene and ran to the victim's apartment. Her body camera captured a traumatic scene with parents huddled over an unresponsive baby, lying on its back and wearing only a diaper. Officer Jones, who is a trained EMT, recognized the critical condition and immediately began chest compressions. She stopped to assess and began a second round of compressions. Shortly thereafter, the baby began to respond and become alert, but still could not breathe. Officer Jones transitioned from back blows to back blows as she recognized a possible airway obstruction. The first set of back blows were unsuccessful, so she repositioned the baby to her knee and continued. Officer Jones was finally able to dislodge the obstruction and the baby began to cry. Officer Jones then positioned the baby on its side so as not to swallow anything else and to stabilize for medical personnel. She followed the ambulance to the hospital as her personal assurance to the parents that their child was okay. And the ER doctor did confirm that and told Officer Jones that she had saved the baby's life. An addendum, Deputy Mayor, the following day, and then a week later, Officer Jones returned to the baby's house to check on her patient and the parents. Suffice to say, a warm welcome, and a dinner invitation for later. Officer Jones's actions have reflected great credit upon herself and the Billings Police Department. Deputy Mayor, this is Officer Annalisa Jones. Thank you. And as part of the citation, we have a certificate and this medal goes along with it.
So who is this?
This is Lance. This is my son who she saved.
Wow.
You want any pictures, Mayor?
Would you like a picture in front of the council with the family? Come on. Come right up here. But you have to look that way. Thank you. Oh, that was nice.
And Deputy Mayor, I had two more that I was hoping would show up in the line of officers back there. They are not there, but with your permission, I'll read the
Go ahead,
citations.
please.
On February 17th of this year, officers were dispatched to the 300 block of Monroe Street. One of those officers was Lance Weber. They were advised that an altercation had taken place and that a male had been stabbed. Officer Weber arrived and located the victim laying on the ground in the alley. The victim had sustained 2 stab wounds to his left leg, one severing the femoral artery, causing massive hemorrhaging. Officer Weber recognized the severity of the wounds and cut the victim's clothes off to assess. He quickly applied a tourniquet and followed that up by packing the wound with a combat gauze. When other officers arrived to assist, Officer Weber applied what is called an Israeli bandage to further stem the bleeding and prepare the victim to transfer to medical personnel. Because of Officer Weber's action, the victim survived what could have been a mortal wound. And separate and apart, on June 29th of this year, Officer Weber responded to an injury accident at 20th and King. Upon arrival, he saw an SUV lying on its side with a 79-year-old man trapped inside. The victim's arm was nearly severed and he was hemorrhaging badly. Again, Officer Weber applied a tourniquet and stopped the bleeding until medical units could arrive. Following extrication, the victim was transported to the hospital where unfortunately his arm was amputated. However, thanks to Officer Weber's initial actions, the victim survived. His actions as well reflect great credit upon himself and the police department. And it's unfortunate he couldn't be here to receive this, but we'll catch up with him. And last, Mayor, with your permission, On January 19th of this year, an elderly female was preparing her breakfast when a fire broke out in her kitchen. The victim called 911 and reported that her kitchen was fully engulfed in flame and smoke. The 911 operator attempted to get the victim to leave the house, but she froze and was unable to leave. Officer Richard Gilmore was on patrol in the area and overheard the call. He immediately responded and opened the front door, where he was met with thick, hot smoke. From his position, Officer Gilmore could see that the kitchen area was fully engulfed in flames. Disregarding his own personal safety, Officer Gilmore dropped to a crouch and entered the house, calling for the victim. He located her and found her to be dazed and confused. Officer Gilmore grabbed her by the arms and escorted her out of the burning house, saving her from serious injury or death. And another addendum, Deputy Mayor, I was properly admonished and reminded by the fire chief of the tremendous danger of entering burning buildings without proper protective equipment, and encouraged to remind my officers, which I did. In the meantime, following my scolding, I will recognize Officer Gilmore for his heroics. His actions as well have reflected great credit upon himself and the police department. And Deputy Mayor, that is Richard Gilmore. And thank you, Council, for your time.
Thank you, Chief. Yes.
So, Chief, I'd say that 2-year-old is a new recruit.
I'm sorry, Councilmember, I didn't hear you.
That 2-year-old young man is a new recruit. Stay with him.
Mr. Iflin may disagree with you. I may be around to hire that person. Thank you for the comments.
Next, we have a proclamation, and it's 2 pages, so bear with me. 2022 National Health Center Week Proclamation. Whereas, for more than 50 years, community health centers like Riverstone Health Center Clinic have provided high-quality, affordable, comprehensive primary and preventative health care in our nation's underserved communities. Whereas, Riverstone Health Clinic is Montana's first community health center, having been established in 1984, and now has clinic locations in Bridger, Joliet, and Warden, as well as homeless outreach clinics and school-based health centers in Orchard Elementary and Medicine Crow Middle Schools. Whereas community health centers are the healthcare home for 30 million Americans in over 14,000 communities, and nationwide, one in every 12 people get their care in a community health center. Whereas 1 in 10 Americans can get care at a Montana community health center, including nearly 14,000 through Riverstone Health Clinic. Whereas Riverstone Health Clinic provides essential, affordable, and high-quality testing and treatment for COVID-19 for the community's most vulnerable and underserved. Whereas the community health center model is an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status, improving healthcare outcomes and cost. Whereas Riverstone Health Clinic is dedicated to integrating a wide range of services beyond healthcare, including oral health, behavioral health, pharmacy services to meet the needs of the community. Whereas community health centers are on the front lines of emergency health crisis, providing care for veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to natural disasters. Whereas Riverstone Health Clinic and all community health centers are governed by patient majority boards, ensuring that patients are engaged in their own healthcare decisions. Whereas Riverstone Health Clinic generates more than $25 million in economic activity for our community. Whereas Riverstone Health employs physicians, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, dentists, behavioral care health counselors, medical assistants, and other staff workers as part of a multidisciplinary clinical teams designed to treat the whole person. Whereas Riverstone Health reduces overall health care spending by helping managing patients' chronic conditions, keeping them out of emergency rooms and other costly healthcare settings. Whereas National Health Center Week offers the opportunity to celebrate Riverstone Health Clinic, and other community health center organizations, including their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and others responsible for the continued success and growth since the first community health center opened their doors more than 50 years ago. Now, therefore, to be proclaimed that the week of August 7th through the 13th of 2022 be recognized as National Health Center Week. And I encourage all Billings residents to recognize Riverstone Health Clinics in Billings, Bridger, Warden, and Joliet, and celebrate the important partnership of America's community health centers and the communities they serve. So any other proclamations? Okay, with that, let's go to, let's not say Chris, we're going to say Kevin tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mine's not quite a page and a half tonight, so.
Council reports. Do we have any council reports? Council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Boyette and Council. I just wanted to give a little quick update on the Our Town grant that was received by the city from the National Endowment for the Arts. Staff member Elise Mornett was on a training that will further clarify how that grant is to be administered through the city. So we're to the point where we're doing trainings, which is always a good thing. So thank you.
Councilman Owen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick announcement for the public and for my fellow council members. The National Night Out celebration here in Billings will be next Tuesday, August 2nd, 6 p.m. in the Billings Heights. It's located in the High Sierra subdivision, which is right next to Atonement Lutheran Church. There'll be inflatables, face painting, meals, emergency vehicles. I think Chief St. John is speaking, and I believe the mayor is speaking as well. So this is a great event, chance to build good community relationships with law enforcement. Encourage certainly all my fellow council members to come join us in the Heights, as well as the rest of the community. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay, then we're going to go to Kevin again.
All right, Deputy Mayor, I'm off. So council has indicated that they'd like to possibly remove regular item number 3 from the agenda until a full council is in attendance. This would require a motion and a 3/4 majority approval of all council members present tonight, which would be 7 if you guys would like to do that. I think Deputy Mayor is going to address that shortly after this report. There was one ex parte communication sent to the mayor and council after 3 p.m. today from Sean Nelson from Zoo Properties in support of regular agenda item number 2. And after the conclusion of the business meeting tonight, we will be doing a special work session on land use. So the deputy mayor, I think, is going to adjourn that meeting and then call for just a short break, and then we'll reconvene to give Community 7 a chance to kind of switch over the recordings and get everything set up. And if you would, I'd like to ask Deb Milling, our Public Works Director, to come up and provide just a quick update on last night's storm and where we're at on a few things.
Good morning. It's never enough time between when I get to come and give updates on things that are happening in this city. Anyway, so we have been working and will be working for a while to clean up from this storm. We have all of our crews out either in sweepers or cleaning out inlets. Obviously, if we get any precipitation before we get all those cleaned out, that would be a bad thing. So we borrowed crews from some of our other divisions as well, have everybody out there doing that. It'll take at least the rest of the week to get that work done. And then we have a plan, a lot of big limbs and trees and that sort of thing are down. So we're planning a cleanup to do some cleanups the next probably 3 or 4 Saturdays, try to get the whole city cleaned up. There will be information coming out on our website and on our Facebook page about where we'll be, what kind of trees we can take, what kind of branches, that sort of thing. So you'll see a little bit more information, but those will be on Saturdays for the next month probably. We are looking, right now we have, as part of our city code and our resolution, it says that anything over 1,500 pounds in the city does have an extra charge on it. We really want people bringing those big trees out. We don't want to pick all those up. So we would like to waive that 1,500 just for large trees in the city for the next few weeks so that we can encourage people to bring those loads out. We don't want to have to go pick all of them up. So Gina and I are working on what mechanism that is to actually do that, because it's code, but it's also a resolution. Last time we just took a vote. So we're going to work on the tool to actually do that. But if you'd be amenable to that, we'd like to offer that.
Councilman Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, Deputy Mayor Boyette and Council. Just one question. Is there some way that you could announce before council meetings, at council meetings, where you're going to be and what the cleanup will be? I know that we don't have a huge audience, but sometimes it helps to, get the word out. So, thank you.
We can certainly do that. We're trying to put a plan of attack together, especially for those weekends. We'll post those and I'll also share those here. As far as where we'll be sweeping, I'm going to try to get that posted tomorrow. We were kind of just trying to figure out where all we needed to be today and put a plan of attack. So we did pick up quite a bit of the south. The South Triangle is where we spent most of our time because it was the worst today. But we'll try to get ahead of all that so people can move vehicles and know where we are. So I'll work on getting better information out.
Councilmember Purington?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I know this isn't really your expertise, if you will, but the code red that came out, it seemed like it came out right when it was happening. I'm not sure about, I know one gentleman wrote about the National Weather Service. So I don't know who has, I know the county does the code red, and I would assume that's EOS maybe? So I don't know how that operates so that they can get those alerts out sooner.
So we do have access to Code Red. Kevin has a login. I have a login. But I believe that is the county that actually did that last night. I'm not sure what their process is to actually work with Weather Service, but I can reach out to Casey and see how that happens and if we can get ahead of that a little bit.
Because I get them all at the same time, whether
Right.
it's a text, an email. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Debbie, we waived some fees for the Red Lodge when that disaster up there. I think it's appropriate to do something like that here. My concern is, I think I've always said the same time we did for Red Lodge, is when you do that, there's going to probably be some fraud in there. So residents may pay someone expecting they have to pay a dump fee, but then they don't get paid. So how are we going to make sure that we're not just packing some services pockets with some extra waivers?
Right. So for the most part, most loads that come in a standard pickup will be less than the 1,500 pounds. They usually fall kind of within that. If we see a commercial business come up there, our plan would probably be to charge commercial. But I guess we got to work out the details of that because it is our residents paying that as well. So if they can get a break on that, that'd probably be good. But at this point, we had kind of talked about still charging commercial for that reason.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Anything else, Kevin?
That's all I have, Deputy Mayor.
So the topic was brought out about item number 3. Councilman Neese?
I'd like to make a motion to table the item number 3 as the motion from last week that was passed to the next full council meeting.
We have a second. So discussion. Councilman Joy.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the movement about the word full. What do you mean by full council? Thank you.
What it would mean would 11 council members present to vote.
Any other questions? Councilman Purington.
Well, just as far as the discussion, that is also reflected in the minutes that we had, that it was to be, it was delayed until there was a full council. And not knowing this last meeting that everyone, or 2 of our members would be gone, so.
Okay. Councilman Neese.
One more question for Gina. Gina, if the motion that was made last time was passed and is stipulated to be full council, would that require us to not take action on this item then?
Councilmember Neese, Deputy Mayor and Council, it was my understanding that the motion was to postpone the item until the next regular business meeting so that it could be considered by the full council.
That's
And
I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
That's just my understanding. I didn't review the recording. It would be extremely difficult to postpone something on the condition that there's going to be a full council, because it's virtually impossible to know that everybody is going to show up at any given meeting. And notice requirements, you have to place the items on agenda, you have to provide notice. So you're essentially going to always be required to make this similar kind of motion. So I think that kind of a condition would be virtually impossible for the staff to provide proper notice to the public. And if I could just have one more clarification, or ask for one more clarification. Your motion was to table the agenda item, and just to clarify, when you table something, that just means to set it aside for the meeting, and then it requires affirmative action by a council member to remove the item from the table. That would have to be done at this meeting or at the next regular meeting. So I would suggest using the language of postpone to a specific date.
Okay, and just to clarify, as Councilwoman Purinton said, the minutes do reflect that it was to be done at the next business session with the full council. So it was recorded in the minutes that way. So that was the motion, that's what we approved. But if I need to change my motion to the next business session at the next business session with full council, that would be fine. But
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
I think you should change. Can you change your motion?
yeah, I'll change my motion to say to the next business session with the full council of 11 members.
And again, that would essentially result in staff placing it on the agenda for the next regular business meeting. And if there again is not a full council and council then wishes to move it, you will again need to go through the same steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I understand that.
So we've changed the motion, and the second's okay with that? Okay. Any discussion? Councilman Choi.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I won't support the motion. We have to have a quorum in order to operate. The idea of a full council, I'm not sure what that means. Does that, I'm not clear what that means. It seems to be setting some kind of new category of a council meeting that I'm not sure what that means. I won't support it. A quorum is all we need. Thank you.
Just to clarify it, Gina, we would need 7 people to affirm this, or in order to pass this. Is that correct?
Yes, you'll need 7 of the members tonight to vote.
So, Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Gina, can you clarify, why did we only need a majority last time, but we need 3/4 this time to delay to the next meeting?
I don't recall that's what happened last time. It's, our rules generally require, section 2-213 requires 3/4 of all council members present to remove any item from the agenda. So if we did that last time, that appears to have been a mistake. I don't recall that happening.
Yeah, it was a 6-4 vote last time, so it should have just proceeded last time?
Yes, I apologize if that's something I missed or.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Siriki.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a couple of questions. So essentially what we're trying to do here is to change the definition of the quorum to everybody being here. Is that something that can just be done by a regular vote? Or do we have to go through regular, the more amended process, like changing the city ordinances and stuff like that?
Councilmember Chiriki, maybe I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. You're asking how can council redefine what a quorum is?
What it seems to me is we're doing is we're changing quorum for this specific issue to be 11 people, which quorum is defined in our code. So can we just, by a majority vote of council in a given minute, in a given meeting, can we change the definition of quorum for one specific issue, or do we have to do it across the board?
No, Councilmember Trichy, the definition or what would constitute a quorum cannot be changed in the manner you've just described. Essentially, that's why I was explaining that the motion needs to be that an item is placed on the agenda, and the council as a whole will then need to vote on whether you're going to remove it from the agenda to be considered, or if you're going to just leave it on the agenda to be considered by the council members who are present. And a quorum is that definition does not change.
Thank you. And a question for Councilmember Ernest. Was that your original intent, was to make sure that everyone was here in order to participate in that vote?
Yeah, I think you're correct in that, because as you recall that last meeting, by the way, Gina, you weren't here during that meeting. That's why you don't remember this, but it was an item on the agenda, and the reason it was we kept getting a 50-50 vote and it kept failing. And so to move on to additional business, that's why I made the motion, so we can move on to it and come back to it when we had a full council of 11 people here to vote it, so we wouldn't have this constant 50-50 split. And so that's what was approved that night. It wasn't so much as we took it off the agenda, we addressed it at the agenda saying, let's table it or move it to the next meeting, and you'd have to read the actual minutes of what the motion was. And so that was the idea, just to get us moving on to business, because I wanted to get going on it, and then we had a full council to vote on it because it was such a kind of a split topic. So it was the procedure. If we did it wrong, as far as saying that we had to have 11, I can take that as an admonishment the next time we can't do that. But I think this, I think we should honor the process that we approved and wait till we have a full council to vote on this. But that's the process, and that's what that was passed by the council.
Councilmember Burrington.
Thank you. So we didn't ask for it to be tabled. It was asked to be delayed. So there is a terminology difference. Now, whether or not it makes a difference in what we do today, I don't know. But I'm just trying to go back to the original request. And so, anyway, that's all.
Councilmember Repsis.
Well, we have 9 here tonight, so I'm pretty sure we won't end up with a tie. I think we just need to get on with it and do the council's business.
Councilmember Gulick.
I'm not, I think if we hold it up for just, who knows when we're going to have a full council yet, and we're just going to have the staff keep putting it on the agenda again and again. We just can't predict, because even if we all looked at our schedules, someone could get sick, there's just any number of things. I think I'm not per se inclined not to vote on it, but I don't think it's good policy for us to not, when we have a odd vote to our number, we still have quorum. So I don't think I will support the motion.
So I thought maybe have a friendly amendment that says we will defer this to the next regular council meeting in 2 weeks, and we'll vote on it one way or the other, because I don't want the idea that we can keep doing this every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. I think that's a dumb thing. Just a thought.
I would withdraw my motion to say to at least honor the request, and if the second, and say that to make a motion to, like you suggest, just bring about the next business session regardless of who's here.
Right. And that would resolve the whole issue.
Resolve the issue of ever bringing it back for, and I appreciate Gina letting us know that we really should not be bringing it back for stipulations like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm not sure why we couldn't settle this tonight. I think part of what happened was when the vote was 5-5, it was going to fail. So I will not support this motion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Treaky?
I don't remember exactly which way I voted on this, because I know I voted for one and against the other. I'm pretty sure I voted to defer this. My intention was certainly not to defer it until we got a full council sitting here. It was simply, we seemed to be stuck, and we needed to, and it was a minor issue, and I thought we needed to move along. If I had realized that we were asking for a full council to be here, I would have considered that to be a major change of the rules, and would not have voted to support it, assuming that I did. And I'm not going to support it tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
So remember, there has to be 7 affirmative in order to get rid of number 3 for 2 weeks. So any other questions before we vote? Okay. So does everyone understand the motion that Council Member Neese is to move it to the next business section, and then it's going to stop, period. It's going to be voted on and not go on forever. Councilmember Purinton.
Well, I just want to make sure, because I didn't really second his amendment to what you had said, but I just want to make sure that we're clear, that it's in the minutes that I seconded his amended motion, or the current motion.
Okay. Is everybody happy? All right. So those in favor of moving this resolution for 2 more weeks to the next business section, say aye.
Aye.
That's 2 people. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
So let's do a raise of hands. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? So it fails. So we're going to talk about number 3 tonight then. Okay, let's move on to,
Deputy Mayor?
yes, sir.
I'd like to make another motion to the agenda to allow public comment on non-public items for up to 30 minutes, or as the Deputy Mayor deems necessary for the evening, and then reestablish it again at the evening, at the end of the meeting.
Is there a second? Council Reps?
I'll second, but I think, did you mean to say on any item, public hearing, non-public hearing, or not on the agenda?
I'm sorry, I meant to say the items that are not on the agenda.
Okay,
Items not on the agenda.
that's fine. Thanks.
Is that okay? And this has been a standard, we've started this several times now, where instead of having people wait till the very last minute, they've been here 4 or 5, 6 hours, they can come up now and talk. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. So this is the time set aside for you can come up and talk about anything you want, other than the items that are on the agenda. We want you to give your name and your address and limit your conversation to 3 minutes. So please come forward.
Hello, Honorable Deputy Mayor and members of the council. My name is Kathy Aragon. I live at 645 O'Malley Drive, and I am the committee chair for a volunteer committee of Healthy by Design, which is the collaborative of Riverstone Health and the 2 hospitals trying to work together to make the healthiest choice also the easiest choice in Billings and Yellowstone County. You may recall that Mayor Cole and yourselves proclaimed 2022 in January, the year of walkability. And as I mentioned, I'm chair of one of the Healthy by Design committees called Movers and Shakers. We're out to identify people in the community that are working hard to make walkability safer, more accessible, and help Billings and Yellowstone County become a better place for all those who walk, bike, or roll. The purpose of the year walkability is to identify current efforts and needs around walkability in our community and discuss potential solutions to fund and improve our pedestrian infrastructure. The issue of walkability and accessibility is not new to this community and is not always an easy topic to address. I do have the winners that on my committee member our committee members are myself as chair, Kathy James, who's a board member as a Billings TrailNet, Kathleen Thatcher from MSUB, Jed Bartlett, Outreach and Government Affairs for LIFT, Living Independently for Today and Tomorrow, and Pam Dimich, a community business owner and community health advocate, Karen Sanford Gall, retired executive director of Big Sky State Games, Elise Monat from the City of Billings Active Transportation, Jenna Solomon, Healthy by Design, and John Halverson, who's a planner at Sanderson Stewart. We've asked people to nominate folks in this community who, like I mentioned, are exemplary in their work in making Billings and Yellowstone County more walkable. And we have 6 winners for the first 6 months. And these first 6 months were sponsored, and the last 6 months are sponsored by our very generous community business owner, Cindy Thompson at Time Out Sports, and she's going to award a pair of shoes to one lucky winner of the awardees in June and then again in December. The winners this month were Janae Cross, Dr. Claire Oakley, Lynn Harper, and Christy Drake from Billings TrailNet, Jordan Teller, and Dr. Tom Manthe from MSUB. Tonight, we have one of our awardees here with us, Jordan Teller, who organizes a walking school bus actually in my neighborhood where my kids went to school, back at Highland School. And she does a fabulous job of working on that. And she's here with her 2 kids, Alden and Meredith. So I'd like to introduce them and thank you for the work that you do. And I hope you will continue to work on making Billings more walkable, bikeable, rollable, and more accessible for all.
Thank you very much. Yes, Deputy.
Question for the comment. Could you, I'm sorry, ma'am? I'm sorry, what? Ms. Argon, could you explain to us in the public what a walking school bus is?
Oh, a walking school bus. Well, you know what a school bus is, where kids all get on the bus. Well, it's the same sort of idea where a community leader, like our parent here, Jordan Teller, and her kids, start in a specific spot in the neighborhood and pick up kids along the way so that they are basically with someone who's from the school and familiar with the school community, and they form a little line that's a basically walking school bus, safely commuting to and from school. Sometimes just to school, and then the kids do have different arrangements after, but you can do it either way, and it's more fun. Kids get to maybe they can explain to you a little bit more about the walking school bus themselves, so.
Sounds great, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hello, council members. I'm Jordan Teller. I live at 528 Beverly Hill. These are my girls, Alden and Meredith, and I would say the credit for walking school bus is due to them. They have decided that walking school bus is such a big part of their lives that they want to do it summer and winter. And we don't have any sidewalks in our neighborhood. And so the kids are post-holing through the deep snow and everything. We made a rule with the moms in the neighborhood that if it's below 15 degrees wind chill, that we will cancel walking school bus, but there's much consternation for that. So we try hard to do walking school bus. We have 4 routes that go to Highland School, one from each direction of the school, and we have about 20% of our kids participating in walking school bus. So I applaud you for making this the year of walkability. I want you to know that walkability is so incredibly important, and more than just for our health. I think there's a huge social aspect to walking and walkability in Billings. It was a big reprieve for COVID, for people to get outside and have some social interaction. I think that has really helped people's mental health. And I can see the connections that these kids make when they are walking to school. They're playing Simon Says on the way to school. We know that brains that are active are more ready to learn than brains that have just been pulled up, dropped off in a car and walking into school. And so there's a huge benefit to walking school buses, to safe routes around town. For adults, for us to commute to places like the grocery store or to work. These guys grew up commuting to work with me and getting dropped off at daycare. I would bike or cross-country ski or walk every day to work and drop them off at a daycare. And I just applaud you for the safe routes that you have made, for the commitment to walkability that you've made. I want you to know that it's really an investment in my grandchildren and in my children and all the generations to come for aspects of health that are not just physical health, but also mental health and social health. We've met so many people in our neighborhood because we take this little train of people all the way through the neighborhood every week, and they know where their friends live, and we know all the parents as a result of the walking school bus. So thank you for your commitment to walkability in Billings.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please step forward. Name and address, 3 minutes. Seeing none. Well, Ming, come on, you gotta hurry up.
I'm sorry I'm late. Ming Cabrera. I guess I'm representing the Billings Heights Business Association. I don't know if anybody knows this, but in the Heights, a new business has opened up called Grinding Bikini Barista. Okay, and I've had 4 calls from people in the Heights that are objecting to bikini-clad women serving coffee, or is it sex? One of the two. So I've already talked to Tina Hoger about it. They meet code, oh, by the way, I'm 1734 Poly Drive. They do meet code enforcement. They may not meet OSHA requirements because I owned a restaurant at one time. And if you have a restaurant, you need to wear long pants, not a bikini to work. Okay, so I'm just letting you aware of, they were just on KTVQ. They plan to open more of these in the city of Billings. We had a big problem with massage parlors and marijuana. Well, when is it going to kind of look at, are we really selling coffee or are we really selling sex next time? And believe it or not, the objections aren't coming from the parents. It's coming from the kids. 13-year-old kids are saying, Mom, I don't think this is appropriate. Dad, this is not appropriate. That's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. So Heights, bikini, grinding, whatever, take a look at the website. Be expecting more of these. And I think we need to have a discussion on this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ming. Anyone else? Now is the time for a public comment on non-public items, which is our agenda tonight, 1, 2, and 3. There's an agenda back on the little tray there if you want to come up and talk about these items. This is your opportunity. You have 3 minutes. We want your name and address. Anybody? We have anybody online? No? Okay. Seeing none. We'll move on to consent agenda. Any council members? Any separations? So, Councilman Shrieky.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I have some questions, although I'm not sure I'm going to oppose it, but I'd like to separate 1G, the block grant for the neighborhood plan for the West End.
Okay. Anyone else? Council Member Anise?
1J.
Any other separations? Okay. Do I hear a motion? Council Member Kulik?
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda as submitted with the exception of items 1G and 1J.
Is there a second? Second by Council Member Anise. Any discussion? Councilmember Repsis?
Thank you. I'm not going to oppose it, so I didn't separate it. But I just wanted to point out, we have a preliminary plat this week, preliminary major plat for Wild Rose subdivision. And if you look at that plat, there is one little semicircle, half cul-de-sac that's kind of carved out for 2 lots. And it got me thinking, because we had a lot of conversation on our street maintenance district fees. And I was wondering how much it will cost the city to maintain that little extra semicircle of pavement over the years, and how much those 2 lots might end up contributing in street maintenance district fees over that period. And so I asked our director, Public Works Director, Debbie Melling. She gave me an estimate of about 65 cents per square foot, and there were lots of caveats on there, but it seemed to be decent enough for, for this type of discussion. It turns out that every 15 years, we need to be collecting about $320 per year to maintain that little half semicircle of pavement. And it just so happens that those 2 lots, using the square footage on the plat and the rates that were shown to us last week, will contribute about $320 per year. over the next 15 years. So essentially, those two lots are going to be paying for their own little half circle of pavement and not contributing anything to the larger maintenance of the streets in Billings. I just wanted to point that out. So that, to me, it does a couple of things. One, it points out the need for that cost of services study. We have to know and have to get better at planning when we do these subdivisions, knowing the impact of the infrastructure that we're putting in and making sure that we can cover those costs over the long term. And so as we get into subdivision, and I know we're going to probably get into that tonight later on, subdivision rules and those types of things, I think it's something to be aware of. And I just wanted to point that out. I don't want to, make policy and oppose it tonight, but I think we need to understand the financial implications of something as trivial as a plat here with an extra semicircle of pavement in there. It has a good long-term cost that we need to recognize. Thank you.
Councilman Neese.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tom, I agree with you on some of this, and I hopefully we'll learn this in the work session. But my question would be: is at what time does the council say we don't like this plan? My understanding was preliminaries, we don't get involved in those, we approve them. But if we need to pull them and start doing that, how does that work? And I don't know if Wyeth can answer. Is that going to be discussed in our sessions as far as planning and working? If, at what point does the council get involved in saying, no, we're not going to approve this plot, we don't like the way this plot's being designed? Do you know when that happens, or is that, you're going to cover that within some of the sessions we're having?
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, tonight, we're going to go through the whole process for subdivision review with you, and you'll see both where the departments and different other organizations that review the plats are involved, and then when it comes to council and the points of action for the council as well. Okay. So we're going to go through the whole thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So we have a motion for the consent agenda items with the exception of G and J. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. So Council Member Chiriki, number G, you separated that item?
Director Friday, could I ask you a couple of questions?
Turn your mic
Actually, I should have given you this because I gave your
Yeah, thank you.
What I'm curious about, so I'm not against the idea of getting the neighborhood plans going again. I think we absolutely need to be doing that, and appreciate your initiative of this. My concern is around the area of we're basically going through the annexation process. We're looking at a whole bunch of different things. Do we need to finish this process and then take a look at the city-county growth plan before we start getting back into neighborhood plans?
So Councilmember Chiriki and Mayor and Council, and thank you, Assistant City Administrator Iflin sent this to me a few minutes right before the meeting that you had sent the email. So I guess the shorter answer is no. I think we can move forward with these efforts now for a couple reasons. One is that to look at outside funding sources like this community development block grant program there's windows to apply. We haven't got the money yet. We're going to take a run at it and see if we can get this funding. We're looking at whether we could do two plans at the same time if we were able to secure this funding and really start to move this process forward. And then, if we're successful, then look at, okay, can we actually, if this is a workable solution to be able to secure some of this grant funding, especially for the larger plans, can we then move this along and work with council and the stakeholders to actually get these plans updated? I will say that the West Billings plan and the Heights neighborhood plan are the largest areas and definitely the most complex in terms of what we have to look at for those areas and even assess the area that they covered the last time. So that's really part of also the reasoning for going at this way, is that additional resource help and the technical piece of that is really important for this. Not to discount other neighborhoods or other neighborhood plans, but just when you look at the area, what's been happening in those areas and the scale, that's really critical for this. So that's the reasoning to try this right now.
One more question.
Certainly.
So I got this list off of the planning website. So this is basically I think it's called the Community Neighborhood Plans page that's on there. One of my questions is, I have one question on here. One, I think it's kind of, so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at what I put into the regional plans, and I'm seeing a 1990 Yellowstone County Comprehensive Plan. I'm assuming that the growth policy from 2008 for Yellowstone County and the city of Billings replaces that?
So Councilmember Shariki and Mayor and Council, yeah, so some of the documents that are on that website are historical, are plans that were done and have been updated. And so what you're looking at there was a county comprehensive plan in 1990. We have done multiple updates to the growth policy since then. And for a while, we were doing combined growth policies, county and city. And so that's when you see the 2008 was county and city. And then now when you see the 2016, that's the city, the latest city policy that's separated, and then the county is completing their own. And actually, you'll also see on there Lockwood, we completed a growth policy just for Lockwood. So that's where you're seeing some of the past ones and then the most current. So that's what's happening. You see that on the website where we've provided some of those.
Thank you. One last question.
You said one. Go ahead.
So I'm looking at like North Elevation Neighborhood Plan. The one that's on there is dated 1994. I'm assuming that you looked at these and in deciding to go with the West Billings plan first, one about complexity and size and the amount of change that's actually happening in some of these neighborhoods that would be impacted by growth. Is that a fair assumption?
Councilmember Tariki and Mayor and Council, correct. Those are the reasons that, we would be looking at those first, and also looking for the outside assistance to do more of the technical analysis that's needed. You'll see here in a few weeks, we're going to be moving forward with our transportation work program for the next fiscal year. And we've also incorporated into that document potential funding to do some of the transportation analysis for those neighborhood plan updates as well. So again, looking at kind of that the large complexity and scale. The other thing I'll just note, not to get off track here, but one of the things that's also and not necessarily totally clear on this list, the Highland neighborhood plan, some of those areas with like North Elevation and Highland, there's actually some overlap and such there when that was updated. So we had a different group that the Highland called themselves the Highland group that did a neighborhood plan, and some of that overlapped with some of those other areas at the time when we did that one in 2007. So there is a little bit of that also there, which isn't obviously super clear just from the list, but just to note that as well.
Okay, thank you, Director.
Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. So Wyeth, I think one of the, let's see, where is it? On the growth policy, I think I mentioned about a year ago that it was outdated. But if I remember, Nicole made the comment that sometimes that is reviewed internally. Is that correct?
Councilmember Purington and Mayor and Council. So yeah, a couple things. The language for growth policies, you are by statute, every 5 years you have to review and determine whether you should update, do major changes, minor changes to your growth policy. And we've started just in terms of internally looking at that. We have not brought that, and we've talked about this actually less than a year ago, I think earlier this year or over the winter, about the idea of looking at that, but at a level of more minor updates versus major updates at this time, because we're not equipped right now to do an entire brand new growth policy, but certainly we have to look at it based on what the language is in the state law and then make recommendations on that.
Okay, so just one follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is just one. With regard to this grant that you would be applying for, this is the first time that you have applied for that grant. So is this something, if you're successful, then you could do that in subsequent years for the other neighborhood plans?
That's correct. I want to make sure I'm saying this right with Monica Plecker here. You can apply, you can do one at a time. So
we could apply, we could get awarded the grant, and we could do that, work with that grant. We couldn't then try to do another grant application at the same time until we had completed. We could do another one after, but we couldn't be trying to do multiples, yes.
Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I move to approve consent agenda item 1G.
Do I have a second? Second, Councilman Repsis. Any debate, questions, answers? Okay. Good time. All those in favor of approving item number 1G, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. That brings us to item 1J. I think that was Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let me pull it up here. So Gina, I noticed on the, on this item that the legal didn't review this. Did you happen to look through the amendments to this SIA contract, or anyone in your department?
I was actually just looking at them right now. So I have reviewed them briefly.
Okay, so can I ask a question about, because this is a waiver doing with subdivisions, and they're only good for 20 years. And after 20 years, then the SIAs can't be enforced. Do I understand that correctly?
Well, that particular waiver, you're correct, is only effective for 20 years. It's my understanding from Monica's email earlier today that there is an additional waiver as part of the annexation process.
Right.
I don't have that in front of me, so I don't know what it says, but generally those include the same or similar language. So we could ask Ms. Flecker what that says.
So there could be some ability to put a SIA in case if it goes over 20 years. But what about in this particular subdivision agreement, the developer is agreeing to pay 50% of the cost. And if the SIA waiver expires and we rely on the annexation SIA to put in place the cost to build the roads after 20 years, will the developer still have to pay 50% of the cost?
I guess I need to look a little closer at the rest of the agreement to make sure I answer that correctly, unless Monica knows the answer right off the top of her head, but I don't know if that is a specific term. Go ahead, Monica, sorry.
Yep, no problem. Councilmember Neese, I did this afternoon reply to your email with all of these questions. So I guess a couple of things. In that email, I explained that because there are two waivers associated with this property and our past guidance from Gina as far as how those two waivers work in tandem, that it wouldn't be necessary to meddle in this SIA and change it because we already have the annexation waiver that is for this legally described property that is good in perpetuity. It does have the same language for special improvement districts, so it's very consistent across the board. The other reason why I don't think it would be advisable to meddle in the SIA language or the waiver to try and get around the 20-year deal is because it's expressly stated in Montana in the Subdivision and Plating Act that those waivers are only good for 20 years. So you're using a tool that is in the state statutes for subdivision to try to circumvent also what's in subdivision. So I just don't think it's good, and I think we're covered also. So I think that's good. And then secondly, to your question about the 50% requirement, that is established in city code. So it would actually, the code would have to change to lower that amount or to increase that amount in order for that 50% to differ. But in all circumstances, without a code change, they will be required, no matter what year it is, when those roads are completed, to contribute 50%.
That would be the developer then?
I'm
The
sorry.
developer would have to complete those, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilmember Owen.
Could we, Deputy Mayor, could we invite the developer up to give us some comments and understand his perspective on this project?
Please give us your name and address.
David Mitchell, 1655 Valley Heights Road, 59105. Council, good evening. You asked for some comments on the project?
On this amendment ahead
On
of
the
it.
amendment. So for us, currently, as you're aware, the material costs and labor costs have skyrocketed since we first came to the council about 10 months ago. So with that, there is being able to phase out some of these improvements will allow, if we were to do all of them right away, it would create a cost per lot that would put it out of market, out of reach for kind of like your median household income and middle class. And so by allowing us this project to be phased out, we can take on a smaller chunk at a time, get it resolved, get the subdivision moving forward with the utilities out there on Alkali Creek Road. So for us, it allows us and end users, families to be able to buy lots at a reasonable price without doing all the development and not being able to sell the lots.
Any further questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to really commend the planning department and the developer for working together to solve this problem. This is exactly the kind of creative problem solving that we need to ensure that projects move forward in this community. I think it's great work, and I'm really pleased to see this amendment come back.
Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor and Council, I move we approve subdivision improvement agreement SIA amendment request for the Timber subdivision first filing.
Is there a second? We have a second, yes. Discussion? No discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving item, consent item number J, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes, okay. So that moves us on to regular agenda. So Denise, can you read item number 2 for us tonight?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, tax increment financing assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal Tax Increment Finance District to Big Sky Economic Development Authority, BESITA, for facade improvements to its property located at 201 North Broadway. DBP Board recommends approval. Action this evening is approval or disapproval of DBP Board recommendation.
So are you up, Mamet, or is it Wyatt tonight?
Let's see, test it. There we go, perfect. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. Mehmet Casey, Development Director with the Downtown Billings Partnership. And yes, tonight's TIF presentation is in regards to what you see in front of you, which will be the future home of the Big Sky Economic Development. As you may know already, the long history of the building, built in 1918 as the Montana National Bank. Originally, it was the corner building. Then in the early 50s, an extension was added to it behind the corner, and then in the also 50s, it rebranded to the First National Bank. And then most recently, I just want to make sure I don't forget any of the previous tenants. At the ground level, the last tenant that was there is Buchanan Capital, but they had vacated also about a year before Big Sky acquired the building in February of 2020. Other than that, other tenants were mostly in the upstairs offices. The Billings Symphony was there. There was an attorney. There was a financial advisor. Elation office was there. High Plains Women's Museum was using it for storage also. And then Zoot Enterprise Data Center and Property Management were tenants in the building as well. Most of the time, it was about half vacant. There are 3 stories and a basement, but now it will all be occupied and used. Additionally, what I've done tonight is I've added also an overview for you to kind of be reacquainted with the facade grant application, because I realize this current body of council has not seen a facade application, solely a facade application. And this is the first one under my tenure as well. But this program precedes me and predates me way back then to when we had the 1997 framework plan and the Main Street program. So that's where it comes from. So with that, this is the purpose of the program. This is straight out of the application. Purpose of this program is to provide financial and practical assistance to encourage rehabilitation, enhancement, restoration, and preservation of facades in downtown Billings as a catalyst to any of the following: attract new customers and businesses to downtown Billings, stimulate new private investment and economic development, positively impact the marketability and perception of downtown Billings, and promote commercial revitalization. Now, incentive monies are also available to developers, property owners, business owners, tenants, so there's a wide range of coverage too of who can apply to this and can access this fund. And it's all to encourage higher level of quality and design in the downtown environment. Funding-wise, there's an expectation for this funding to be available for facade improvement projects based upon 3 factors that you'll see in the next slide. And the award is typically cumulative of those 3 factors. A match of 3 to 1 is required. If you wonder, why does that look different than the city TIF policy? Again, because that predates the creation of the city TIF policy. And because they're smaller grants, it was looked at more of a quarter of the project publicly funded, 3/4 privately funded. Facade projects must support the goals of the Downtown Billings Strategic Plan and the Urban Renewal Plan. Now, what are those 3 factors? 1, the building frontage, and that's the length of the face of the building along the public street. So in other words, the width of the building. Where does it begin and end? Some properties in this scenario, for example, it's a corner property. So it goes all the way from the wall that is adjacent to Valley Credit Union all the way to the alley on Second. The building height is considered as well. How many stories or floors are there? Once you hit 3 stories, you qualify for an additional bucket of funding. In this case, if you don't count the basement, it's 3 stories. If you count the basement, it's 4 stories. And then the architectural significance primarily focused on the historic aspect of those buildings or buildings in the historic district that are deemed eligible for the National Register. In this case, they also qualify and they're going to be on the National Register. So, in terms of the funding expenses and what the eligibility is, here's a breakdown of what it covers. So cleaning, prepping, and painting, window replacement or repairs, door replacement. This is in reference to the main entrances and exits to the structure. Foyer repairs, exterior lighting, facade restoration and rehabilitation, new facades. That's if you're having to construct a brand new facade because the old one is not restorable. Architecture fees or design fees, landscaping and hardscape improvements, building permits and planning fees, and other facade improvements deemed eligible by the DBP Board of Directors. So that's the range of things you can apply for and be eligible to receive funds reimbursing work in that category. In the Big Sky Economic Development case, in terms of the scoring factors, they hit all 3. So the frontage is greater than 110 feet, which is the maximum you can receive funds for. In this case, up to $35,000. It is 3 stories and or taller, so it does trigger that additional bucket of up to $10,000, and then it is a qualifying historic property, which triggers the additional $5,000. If all added up, it comes up to about $50,000. In terms of the actual expenses, here's a list of the expenses. Now, keep in mind, this is just the exterior investment. I believe when you factor in the whole project of the building interior-wise and exterior-wise, it's over $5 million now of an investment. But the exterior is just a little over $200,000. The items that are being considered to be reimbursed are the top 3: sidewalk repair, which is mostly what's under those planters that used to be there. It's all broken up and leaky. Facade repair involves the brick and limestone behind the planters. There's currently a black membrane that you can see from the street. And so once they remove that, they want to do their best to restore it as much as possible to what it used to look like under that. And then there's facade cleaning that will happen both before that step and after that step. The rest of it is funded privately, but to demonstrate the match, the 3 to 1. Project merits, answers to the Main Street elements of the Urban Renewal District and DBA strategic plan, again, that is where it references the framework plan, which is in the urban renewal district on the Main Street projects. And they typically focus on facades being a community asset that is accessed and experienced by all pedestrians and frequenters and shoppers and workers and folks that live downtown. The expenses comply with the MCA and the city TIF policy. Obviously, both the nature of the operation inside the building and being located under Sky Point, it will attract visitations and present a best-case scenario presentation of the building to the pedestrians. Positively improves the marketability and perception of downtown, that we have a strong identity, that we take care of our buildings, that we take care of our community assets, and then it promotes hopefully more commercial revitalization and private investment and economic development in the neighborhood, especially when others start to utilize this tool as well in the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, the DBP recommends approval of the award, a recommendation of the award not to exceed $50,000. It would be in one disbursement upon completion of improvements, and it would only reimburse uncompleted exterior work in those three categories that we saw in the expenses. And with that, I'll open it up to comments, questions, concerns. And I do have the Big Sky Economic Development team here available if you had specific questions for them.
Questions? Councilmember Purington?
So, Mehmet, if you could go back to that last slide, only reimburse uncompleted exterior. I thought it was always the completion. Is that part of this facade?
So yes, so right here, oops, laser is not visible on this. The top three are not done yet or have not started yet.
Correct.
So this is what we're reimbursing, but we wouldn't reimburse until the work is done. So, and then they'll demonstrate paid invoices and receipts. And then when we verify that with the city finance department, and then we would schedule a reimbursement for that. But the rest of the things, some of them are done, but again, it's just to demonstrate the private match. Some of them will be done later, but we're not reimbursing.
So going back to that last slide again, that last sentence, only reimburse uncompleted exterior work. Shouldn't that be completed?
In other words, it's what is qualified is the uncompleted work
Oh,
in the
okay. I see what
first
you're-
three categories, yes.
I
So
got
that's
you.
what we will reimburse. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Joy?
I make a motion if we're ready for that.
I still have a question.
Councilmember Owen?
Mehmet, how do you think this project stacks up with SEPTED principles?
Excellent question. They did actually do the SEPTED evaluation, and they are going to implement some of the expenses you saw in the lighting. That is based on the recommendations from the SEPTED evaluation. Yep, yep.
I see Steve Arviskow is here. Could you come up and give us real quick what you think? Come on, it's your turn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I saw smiles on members of council face. Somehow Steve Arviskow and Quick maybe don't go well together. I would just thank you for your consideration. This is an iconic building in the heart of our downtown, and I think our organization, frankly, is in a very unique position. We can bring supporters and resources to bear that we're not able to come to bear to turn this building into something very exciting. One thing I do want to modify, our organization will occupy the third floor. All of our suite of services that we provide our community will be in that building. But the ground floor, the basement, the lower level, don't get mad at me for that. The lower level, the first floor and the second floor are really dedicated to entrepreneurs in our community. There are goals well beyond just the programs that we provide. In fact, our programs will complement what you see taking place on that first floor, where it'll be an incubator, an accelerator, and a co-working space for entrepreneurs in our community, with the goal of accelerating and strengthening our entrepreneur ecosystem. Deputy Mayor, I have to, and one last comment, I don't think the mayor needs to run to Vermont to get great ice cream. Because we've got great local businesses that do that. And what we're trying, Wilcoxon's an example, Big Dipper, I can go all the way down the list. That's what we're trying to do here is from the ground up, from the inside out, create stronger resources so we can be cultivating our own business startups, giving them the resources they need, connecting them with each other, connecting them with mentors and funders so we can grow economically from the inside out. Very important element for a growing economy. And we're creating an asset here that we think will take that work to a whole nother level.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Joy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. I move to approve the tax increment financing assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal Tax Increment Finance District to Big Sky Economic Development Authority for reimbursement of the identified building facade improvements to its property located at 201 North Broadway, up to a maximum of $50,000 as recommended by the DBP Board.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Shaw, okay. Any debate? Councilmember Neese.
Just a comment that I just want to disclose that I did have a conversation with Steve about this project, and we basically talked about everything that we heard here tonight. So I didn't have any different information that was disclosed.
Any other questions, debate? Okay. I understand the motion. Councilmember Gulick.
I guess I had a similar disclosure then. I also had a good conversation and communicated how excited I was to have this project be animating this corner, this very important corner in downtown, and think it's a great project. I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, let's vote then. All in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Thank you. So Denise, let's read number 3.
Deputy Mayor, resolution to establish landfill reserve for future capital expenses. Staff recommends council not approve the resolution. Action this evening is approval or disapproval of staff recommendation.
So I guess, Deb Melling, you're on.
I am on. Jennifer and Chris took the week off so that Kevin and I are here for this. So when they get back, you can let them know that Kevin and I were way better than they were last week. I'm sure neither of them are watching, so it'll be fine. I'm just killing time till Kevin gets it up. Are we good? Okay. Okay, so this was continued. I used the word continued, delayed, not tabled, on the 11th. So we're going to talk a little bit more about landfill reserves. This was a really good exercise for me because I hadn't understood all the nuances of this, so I kind of walked through it as I was putting this together, so hopefully this works well for you. I never do slides like this, so I apologize, but it's a great amount of information. So what I did here was say exactly what the actions were and exactly what came out of them. And so on in 2019, we were setting our FY20 rates, and this is when we had an amendment for a motion to revise the rates to up to 15%. So that did not have a specific instruction about where that went. During that meeting, we did say that that money would go to capital projects because we do have a lot of capital projects going on. In June of 20, when we were setting the FY21 rates, Councilmember Ewalt made the motion that had the 10% fees above, so instead of the 5% that we recommended, they did 10% and use it toward landfill expansion. So because that was earmarked, we actually put that money aside, and you can see that was the year that we put $346,000 in a separate account. So we accounted for that differently that year. When we set our FY22 rates, the motion was to approve the rates as presented. In that particular year, we had the increased amount for the out of city, but we did not have anything about it going to a particular fund or used for a particular purpose. And then the last thing was the initiative that was done in December of 21, and that basically said, the reason I put this on here was there was discussion about that last week, but it basically said the city administrator needs to work with Public Works to bring back a resolution for this. So whether this passes or doesn't pass tonight, that initiative has been taken care of just by bringing it back. So we don't have to do anything else with that.
So that's basically what happened. That's why we have $346,000 set aside for all of those different things. So when we look at what the impact of this resolution is, one, council sets the rates already. That's your job. So when we bring you rates, that covers all capital and all O&M for collection and landfill. The council approves all capital improvement plans and the budget. So we have always brought back capital that's more than what we're talking about in this fund, which is about $900,000. So neither one of those would really change. The two other things that would add are the resolution would add some restriction to funding. And I did a visual on this next page just to kind of show you what I mean there. But it could limit, if certain things happen, it could limit the council's ability to use those funds to kind of balance what we're looking at here. And I'll show you that in a minute. And then the resolution requires additional accounting. We've talked about that. Jennifer kind of alluded to that at the last meeting. So I put this together. I'm hoping it makes sense. My brain works a little differently than some people's, but hopefully it works. If you look at this left side, this is what we have today. So we've talked about the fact that solid waste landfill right now helps keep those rates for collections a little bit lower. We've always done that. We've always used some of those rates to help the collections number stay a little lower. So right now, everything we make, collections, landfill fees inside the city, out of the city, everything goes to balance that landfill and collections, capital and O&M. So right now, our rates meet the expenses as a whole. If we go to doing any kind of earmarking or putting money in a certain account or that sort of thing, what you do is get to that other side where you still have to have rates equal expenses, but now you're breaking that into pieces and parts. Will it matter most years? Probably not. Can it? This is where I'm talking about it might restrict your ability a little bit. So on the top, we've got the landfill O&M and the collections capital O&M can still use 4 of those funds. On the bottom, we've got just the landfill capital and you can use 5 of those funds. Like I said, almost every year, this is not going to matter. But if we get to the point where we don't want to subsidize that landfill collection like we talked about a few months ago, it might make it a little bit harder. I just bring that up so that you're aware that that could be an issue. So the action, I put tabled on here. I was pretty sure I had the right word, but it was delayed at July 11th. I did modify the resolution to reflect the vote that was taken at that meeting. That was to take out the words facilities and operations. So the resolution you have in front of you is that modified resolution. The initiative is fulfilled, like I said, either way. This, just talking about it, fulfills that initiative. So we just need to vote on the actual resolution. We did make a recommendation to not approve the resolution just because in our minds, the impact, it has very little impact versus the effort that it would take, which although minor is additional staff time and could possibly restrict the ability to use funds different ways. So if you vote yes, it's not to approve the resolution. I just want to make sure everybody's voting for the right thing there. And that is everything.
Well, let's start with questions. Okay, Councilmember Purinton.
Thank you for doing that, because I went through pretty much the same things that you did. And so one of the questions is, well, I think one, Jennifer did mention, I think it was at the last meeting, she said, no, it's really not going to impact accounting that much. A concern that I have was that, okay, so this was an initiative. The initiative brought about the idea of the resolution. So you're saying the initiative will go ahead and move all of this forward, like the 20% out for capital expansion at the landfill? Or you're saying, no, that then staff will just bring, you won't have the 20% set aside. It will just all come as a lump.
That's right. So what was approved was rates. The initiative was to simply bring this back. So yes, if this resolution is not approved or approved, that's what sets it, not the initiative.
So one more question.
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
one more question. So it's my understanding that, I don't know when it was, but solid waste actually, or the landfill portion of solid waste, had to go out for a bond because they didn't have the money to do something with part of an expansion. And I think that was the idea for this was that there would be, similar to an equipment replacement plan, but it's not equipment replacement, is that we would be able to sock away this money every year, which now I think would grow to, what, $900,000 almost a year. And it doesn't keep us from increasing those rates for out-of-city businesses or entities, but yet it would keep that 20% still reserved so that we would have money on hand rather than go out for a bond. Does that not meet that standard? That's what, I think that was the goal of that.
So what I would say is that this resolution has nothing to do with the bottom line. And we have the same amount of money regardless whether we do this resolution or whether we don't do the resolution. So that amount is already there. Whether it's used for capital or O&M won't make a difference at the end of the day because we're not here to make money. We basically fund our capital plan and fund our operations budget. That's what our rates are. So the money will be there regardless of, the same amount of money will be there regardless of whether we put this aside or don't put it aside.
Let's start at the end. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to make a motion. I'm not trying to cut off questions, but I would just like to put a motion on the table. I move to disapprove a resolution to establish a separate landfill reserve for future capital expenses as recommended by staff.
Is there a second? Councilmember Repsis. Okay. Questions? Councilmember Neese.
Thank you. I'm going to, Debbie, just following up on the lines of questions that Councilwoman Purington had. I was here when Frank made those motions, and I understood some of the history maybe didn't get fully recorded, but I do understand that at the time, the city wasn't charging the 10%.
Right.
And so that was new money to the city. And then he did it a second time, that's why it's 20% more new money to the city. And so when you say that it's regardless of whether we have the money or not, this is all new money. And so what you must have done is grown your budget into the new money instead of what I think as Councilwoman Purington said, was the intent was to put that money aside so that it could be utilized for like expansion or something without having to go to bonding. Let that money really take a big, make a big impact on when we're expanding the landfill or having to buy a shredder or something like that, or go into recycling. We could use that to, as a kickstart or a full payment. And so when you say that it's going to impact the budget, if those resolutions hadn't been passed, we'd be collecting 20% less anyway. I think the only reason we're collecting 20% more now is because we happen to get up to be that it's, 100% more. It's just the numbers kind of matched, and so we just made this rule of now we're at 50%, 100% more. And so what I don't understand is how if this is new money, it's really how this would impact the budget, because it's new money that should be set aside anyway.
So the reason that it doesn't impact the budget is what we've probably done in the last few years is we just don't increase rates as much because we have that fund to match our capital. So is this money in essence going to capital expansion? It is. There's $900,000 a year at least going to capital projects. So had we not had this 20% increase, or had we not increased this amount, when we figure out the rates, we would need to raise rates in order to cover the rest of the programs if we're not going to define where that money's going. So in other words, we have a capital project of a plan of 5 years. Right now, we're just assuming that money is going to go into those capital projects. If we're saying that we don't want to allocate that money to those projects, that we want to kind of set it aside and use it for a project down the road, something different, then we would need to increase rates across the board to pay for that capital program.
Yeah, I think I understand that, but what over the history, we've increased rates 3 or 4%, I think 6% this year, in addition to the 15% the first year and another 10% on top of that. So in fact, I think it was more than that. It was probably at 13%. So we've really increased the rates substantially. The budget has grown substantially because of the rate increases, and partly, I would say a lot of it is to do with these two 10% or 20% increases. And so what you're saying is if the budget now fits that, I guess we've adjusted our spending to what we're already collecting. And so if we were to now take that money and put it aside, that our budget would be short and we'd have to raise the rates on the residents and everyone else to compensate for that?
So yes, our budget right now matches, our revenues will match our expenses. That's how we set our rates. So every year we look at that capital program, we look at what our O&M is, and we look at our revenue. So if we're going to say that part of the revenue can't go to the program that we have in place, then yes, it would raise rates. Had we not had these increases, we would have raised rates, probably on collections. We've been able to keep our rates relatively low on collections because we've had these additional funds that have been coming in, and they make it so we can match that capital program with our with our current rates.
Thank you. Councilmember Owen.
So I'm really struggling to understand this issue, and I feel dumb about it. But I think one of the things that's important to remember is and correct me if I'm wrong when I say any of this, the solid waste department does significant capital improvement every year.
Yes.
Well in excess of the perhaps $900,000 that would be saved if this resolution were adopted.
Yes.
But I think, and I could be wrong, so other council members can correct me, that the focus for the rate increases and for this set aside was really almost entirely on that potential cell expansion that's currently scheduled for fiscal year 2026.
Okay.
So I generally have a preference for making capital investments that would push that off, things like MRFs and composting and all those things. But it seems like those things are planned, and we're still planning a cell expansion. So the cell expansion in the capital improvement plan right now looks like it's about $15 million. Right. So absent this sort of, if we started setting aside $1 million a year, we're still not going to have enough saved by fiscal year 2026. What's your current plan to fund that cell expansion? Is it a bond? Is it a dramatic raise in rates? What's the plan right now?
Okay, this is where we need Jennifer. I'd leave it to you to go just past what I knew.
Sorry.
I will have to look at that. I don't think we'd have enough cash. We would bond for a project that size typically.
But it wouldn't be a rate increase.
No, when she sets up the rates, what she does is she looks at that 5 to 10 year CIP and she sets rates so that we can fund those things that we have planned.
Okay. So taken in the most generous, positive, constructive light, what could this resolution accomplish?
I think the goal of this resolution and what this resolution would accomplish is the fact that we could clearly point to it. The council could say, this money is always used for capital. Because we have such a large capital outlay coming up, that $15 million, we know that the money that we've collected under this is going to go to that project. I mean, it's by far the biggest project we have coming up, and that's what it's going to go for. So I think what it does is give us the ability to say that $1 million is going to capital every year without fail.
Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. From Councilmember Owen's lips to God's ears, that nothing unfortunate happens. I just want to ask, would if, for example, we've had sloughing in one of the cells that has impacted a neighborhood. If we had an event like sloughing again, would this resolution allow that money to be spent for geotech or consulting to deal with something that we aren't planning for? Thank you.
So if it becomes a capital project, this resolution says that it can be used for capital. So anything over $25,000 is a capital project for us. So yes, expected or not expected, it could go into that.
I meant consulting, geotech, that kind of, thank you.
Yeah. When it goes to a larger project, it's all capitalized. So you can capitalize the engineering into it, you can capitalize the geotech.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I have a question for Gina. This is just a majority vote on this one. We're not talking about 75%. Okay.
That's correct.
Councilmember Purington.
Okay, so one of the things that I keep hearing is that we can still, and we will continue to raise rates year after year, because forget about the 20%. We're still going to have to meet those projections that you're speaking to, that Jennifer would know about. Okay. So this is one of my concerns, and I'm just going to say it, is that council approved this initiative. They asked for the resolution. The resolution came 7 months later, and staff doesn't want us to do it. I mean, they're recommending that we don't approve a council initiative which was approved unanimously, basically over 2 or 3 years of fiscal years. And sometimes it was, I think 2 out of those 3 years, it was designated to go for landfill expansion. 1, it wasn't designated, and, and I will give you that. But yet, I mean, the staff came to council, was it last year, and said we want to raise rates 50%, then 100%. So that was voted on for a rate increase. And it was mentioned in the memos that 20% was taken out. So back to my concern is that council is the one that raises, or that sets policies. But at this point, it sounds like we're having to defer to staff on this one.
So definitely council sets policies. We make recommendations. When we saw the initiatives don't usually include any merits of the issue. There's not a pro and con discussion. A lot of times we don't even know where we're going to be when an initiative passes. So the initiative to bring it back, it was voted on unanimously, and we brought it back. When we looked into the issue and saw what the benefits were versus what it would take to accomplish, our recommendation as staff is simply that we didn't see where the benefit outweighed the cost. So that's why we came back with a recommendation of not approving.
Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. I think the reason I'm going to vote yes not to approve the resolution is I mean, I applaud what former Councilmember Ewald brought forward. I think it was great in terms of raising those rates. It brought more capital in, and we're doing it. And I think we've sort of fulfilled what he has, what he brought forward in the spirit. And I think just, and again, it seems like we're bringing that capital, that initial revenue, which is going to be able us to do those capital projects. I don't want to put any handcuffs on in terms of how we go about doing that. Let's let our solid waste staff do a good job of managing it and bringing forward their recommendations. I know. Thank you.
Councilmember Anise.
Question for Gina. Gina, the motion was made to disapprove. If that passes, do we need to take a vote to approve?
No, Councilmember Neese, you don't have to do that. As a matter of fact, I'll just take this opportunity to say that I really don't like this language of this motion at all. And had I been consulted, I would have advised you to simply make a motion to move, that you move to reject the resolution. That's much more simple and more easily understood.
Okay. Mayor, or Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
I would like to make a substitute motion to approve the resolution to establish a separate landfill reserve for future capital expenses as not recommended by staff. I would like to, I'm making the motion to approve the resolution. Approve the resolution.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Purington. Discussion. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion to approve the resolution. Bonding is what municipalities do. We're asset-rich, cash flow poor. The reason why? We don't work on the basis of a profit. We work on the basis of cost of services. Cost of services have to balance out with our revenues. We don't take revenues to pay for capital projects in some really huge way. And we have a capital improvement budget or plan that really shows what we're going to spend money on. This money has no destination. I don't understand that. Taxpayers expect there to be a destination for what's collected. We know what we're collecting goes to that service. Collecting something without a destination doesn't make good sense to me. Bonding is what cities do. We don't earn a tremendous amount of interest off of our investments. Having a lot of cash sitting around doesn't do us any good. Bonding is how we finance things. In the same way businesses use loans, we use bonds to finance what we do. And we get a very good rate for the bonding. We have a very good bonding rate. That's how we do things. Having money without a destination makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Councilman Rupsis.
All right, Gina, so if this substitute motion fails, then we have to go back and vote to reject the original motion, right?
You will then be required to vote on the original motion.
The original motion was to reject.
Reject, essentially.
Is there any way out of this at this point?
It is becoming more and more confusing, but no.
Okay. All right.
I guess I should say that there is two motions to amend can be pending at one time.
I'll call for the question.
So the question is, means we want to vote. So the motion is to approve the resolution as stated? No? Approve the resolution.
But he called the question, so now you have to vote to end the.
No, but I want to make sure that that's what we're voting on.
We're voting on whether or not we'll vote.
Okay, right. Okay, so we need how many, Gina, to approve this? Is that a majority?
You need 2/3, which would be 6 of you.
Okay. So the question is, do we vote? So all those in favor of voting, raise your hand. So looks like a majority to me. Okay. So now what is the motion? The substitute motion.
The substitute motion is to approve the resolution to establish a separate landfill reserve for capital expenses. And it was seconded by Councilmember Purington.
So this kind of takes us all the way back to the beginning then. Okay. So any questions, debate?
Question was called.
Okay, so those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, those opposed, raise your hands. So it's, looks like 6-3, the motion passes. No, fails, right?
7-3, and Deputy Mayor, you were approving it, right?
Yeah, so that was 6-3. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I made the motion for the underlying motion, and I just wanted to comment that I would be happy to accept Gina's recommendation as a friendly amendment of changing the language to, I move to reject the resolution, so it's more clear.
Is there a second?
It was my second, and
Okay. So any debate on this one? Councilmember Owen.
I really appreciate this conversation and the work the Public Works Department has done to answer all of our questions and get us up to speed here. It seems like this initiative did force some important conversations in rate setting, in how we charge out-of-city and out-of-state users. We've talked a lot about enforcing that more aggressively. I think all of that is really positive, but it strikes me now that we've maybe moved beyond this. I know there's some concerns that perhaps funds will get that the value of the increase will get sort of carried off into personnel or O&M. And I'm looking at the budget that we just approved, and I don't see evidence of that. I don't see significant increases in personnel or in O&M costs. I do see massive increases in capital. So I think it's important that council be good stewards of the budget, that we really pay attention and we make sure that capital investments are being made, that when we see big line items like a cell expansion, that we have a plan in place and that we work with the department to develop those plans so that we don't have massive rate increases. But it strikes me that the intent of the rate increases to make capital investments, to not have surprise rate increases on our ratepayers. I think those have been achieved. So it's not because I don't support the merits of this, it's because I think the merits have been accomplished. So that is sort of why I'm going to vote, as I just did and as I will again, to reject this amendment. I think we've done what we needed to do, and now it's incumbent upon us to continue to steward these capital investments forward. Thank you.
Anyone else? This is the last time. Okay. So.
Are you sure?
Yes. The motion is to reject the resolution. All those in favor say, raise your hand this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed? 2, so it has been rejected. Does that help you, Deb? All right. Okay. Public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody in the audience wants to talk about something, anything? Change the subject. Okay. I don't see any. How about council initiatives? Any council initiatives? Okay. So when I gavel for, I'm going to say meetings are closed, we're going to wait 15 minutes and we're going to come back. So it gives time for Channel 7 to do their stuff, and we're going to have a special work session.
So Deputy Mayor, it probably wouldn't take him 15 minutes if you want to shorten that.
Well, or in 10 minutes. Make sure everybody can go to the bathroom and get a drink.
7:30?
7:30 would be great.